One. Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It
Bracket,
is
bracket,
Sunday,
bracket.
February 16th. That means it is time for brackets, and Griggs is
Brackets!
excited.
Yes!
This is our Sunday night bracket rundown show. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. We've got David Dorman and David Griggs up top here, Matt Sikowski below me, John Teitel and Mike Chad at his sides. And what we did tonight was, as we've done a few times this season, maybe this is only the second time we did this season, I had everybody submit to us their personal seed list of where they feel the top 55 teams in the nation are right now, which is honestly beyond the edge of the at-large field for the NCAA tournament. I cross-country scored them, and we're going to be revealing a bracket, kind of Selection Sunday style. But
Yeah.
before we get to any of that,
Yes!
it is
You've
time for
got,
a little blind resume. How about that?
love blind resume. And again, it's important to remember that this is how the actual selection committee selects teams.
I thought I'd switch things up and go towards the top of the bracket instead of talking bubble teams with a blind resume tonight. So I got a couple resumes up here that if these two teams are not in the field, I think we did something wrong tonight, first of all. But Tytel, I know you're a big fan of these. Your thoughts, left or right, who is better?
Wright appears to be a bit of a home court hero, as the left has done much better on the road. They both don't have anything terrible on their resumes, although only tier two losses on the left. OERs are similar. JNG is much better on the left, and since I am a believer in the JNG, I will go with the team on the left.
I
You go.
absolutely know who the team on the right is.
Okay,
The
before
court,
we
but
announce it,
yeah.
before we spoil it, then let me get a few other opinions here. Matt, what about you?
I was looking probably slightly the team on the left that a little more quality with eight Q1 and Q2 wins. Oh no, they're tied. Wow, but seven of the eight out of the left are in Q1, where it's five of the eight in Q2 or at the right as far as the left. Man, that's like I said, it's pretty close. I probably just lead the team on the left.
First of all, Rocco Miller joining us as well. Rocco, first of all, thanks for jumping in here. Mike, let me ask you a question though. We are as we look at these two blind resumes. Are you with them on the team on the left? The team on the right, yes, they don't have any road wins, but there's only three road wins are Tier 1A, top of Tier 1 road wins.
Yeah, I mean they're both very good profiles, but I'm with Matt where I like the one on the left a little better because it's got uh seven tier one wins with four of them on the road, whereas the profile on the right has five and then three on the road. So seven's more than five, so I'm gonna go with the left.
I couldn't sell anybody on the right here.
Well,
Dorman, do you,
okay, never mind.
yeah,
Before we announce them, I want to make a comment.
okay, we'll make a comment because I was going to ask
Well,
Dorman if
no,
he's
I mean,
figured out
it's
who they are.
right before we announce them because my
Okay, well,
comment gives it away.
okay, Dorman, have you figured out who the teams are?
I have not figured out, but just a quick note. I would go with the
Yeah.
team on the left. When you look at strength of schedule, when things are so tight, like all the guys said, strength of schedule and the net is clearly better on the left. I'd go left as
Oh,
well.
oh boy.
All right, Griggs, go
Really?
ahead.
Well, Grant McCasland is going to flip his
Wow.
mind when he figures out that everybody went with the team on the left. That's got to be Texas Tech on the right. That's got their week out of conference schedule and that road win, which I think is Houston topping it off. That's got to be Texas. It's not.
Wow.
It's not
It,
Texas Tech.
it
Yeah,
is
the
not
team,
Texas Tech.
Yes,
team
it
on
is.
the
Yes,
team
it
on the
is.
left
I
is
Missouri.
got
done
it
I think
that.
the
right.
road win
No,
against Florida
no,
is
that is
Florida.
Texas Tech. I
Hold
got
on,
it
hold on a second. One at a time. Rocco,
Missouri.
tell
It's
them who the team is.
Missouri. It's Missouri. I just
Nah.
saw them yesterday.
Nah.
It is Missouri there on the right and
Wow.
Arizona on the left. And I brought this up also because I thought we saw yesterday the selection committee's bracket reveal. I'll put it up here on the screen real quick. I thought that was one of the biggest surprises was Arizona in there on the three line. Missouri, a team that did not make the committee's top 16, but I think we just saw that that's a team that I thought was close. Granted, Arizona lost the game since that revealed, uh, but Rocco, you just saw Missouri. Have any comments on these two teams, or your thoughts on the maybe on the top 16 as well? Maybe Missouri, did they belong up there?
They didn't belong up there based on the fact that those two big wins they had before yesterday's win at Georgia were their only two road wins at all against the field, at all, anything away from Columbia. They were 2-5 until yesterday. Now they're 3-5. It's still not a good record as a percentage, but those three places are very respectable places to win. Winning at a 1 seed, winning in Starkville, and now winning against a bubble level team in Georgia. But Georgia's been a really good home team. So if you look at it that way, it's actually like 3 very good road wins. And then Missouri as a team, we can get into that later. Beyond impressed. I mean, they had a sequence where they made 9 straight shots, possessions, all different types of players, older team, all the different pieces. I think they have a very high ceiling. I know we've talked about Illinois being that type of team and maybe a Wisconsin, but Missouri belongs in that conversation, in my opinion. I think they get overlooked because there's so many things to look at in the SEC. And then I think as the reveal goes, mostly understand it. I think when it came to that last 3 seed with Arizona getting it, it was either them or Texas Tech because they have the most upside. You like St. John's, Michigan, Kansas, more resume based, but they certainly had flaws, each of them, in terms of their upside, their performance rankings. So I was, I thought actually Arizona and Texas Tech belonged on the 3. I was surprised to see Wisconsin get it because I didn't think Wisconsin had the resume, but obviously that didn't matter. In about 3 hours, they went and won at Purdue, and now they're probably sniffing the 2 line.
Yeah, Titel, I got to ask you, you being a bracket guessing expert as well, when you saw the bracket reveal, it's almost kind of funny though. Here we are just 36 hours later, and with everything that happened in the last 36 hours, maybe this is completely meaningless at this point.
It's meaningful, but in context, I think in the past, people either on this show and or the committee or both have stated that the word I think that's used is snapshot. So it's meaningful to know this weekend where teams stack up. Is it meaningful for Selection Sunday and going forward? Absolutely not, in terms of all these teams could win or lose multiple games in the weeks ahead, and this will be a bunch of shifting. It's helpful now. I'll defer to Rocco, but for me, just to know, yes, my bracket is not insane. It matches up very well with these things, so that I think I'm on the right path.
And John, I think the other side of that is they're actually maybe looking at people like us more than they used to. They actually kind of mentioned that on the show yesterday, that the great bracket, they didn't say any specific people or whatever, but that's fine. They just said the great bracketologists out there are actually helping us. That's what Bubba Cunningham said that at one point in the show, and I was like, wow, they really lean on us now. That's kind of impressive, actually.
Well, they lean on Titel. I think they mentioned Titel.
I wouldn't blame them. I would not blame them.
Let's get to the meat of today's show. How about that? This is the bracket we're going to be revealing. We are going to be kind of doing what the selection committee did on Saturday with the top 16 seeds. But we're going to keep going and after the top 16, go all the way. I believe that 5 of us were on the show here. Myself, Matt, Griggs, Mike, and Titel all submitted our lists here. I know Dorman and Rocco, you weren't able to get them in. Our friend John Sleek also submitted a list. He couldn't make the show tonight, though. But I cross-country scored those lists. Go ahead.
Well, let's just make a point, because I do know that I've noticed that the traffic is up and there might be a lot of new viewers. This is not attempting to guess the committee. I know that that's popular. If you want to see what you think the committee would do if today were Selection Sunday, right up there in the bracketology tab is John Titel's bracket. Not only does he guess it, but he guesses it better than just about anyone else on earth. This is us. That's right. If we were the committee, this is what we would do.
I'd also argue that this being almost a committee type thing may mimic the committee more than one person only. But
it probably does. But we're not trying to guess the committee. We're trying to simulate the same exercise. But this is our committee. Does that make sense?
A little bit. Anyhow, let's go ahead here and start revealing teams. And honestly, the top seed line, this was pretty amazing. That we pretty much all of us had the top 4 teams in the same order. But let's just take a quick look at them here. Auburn.
What?
Can you believe it, Mike?
Wow.
How about the Auburn Tigers after they won at Alabama somehow being the number 1 team in the nation, number 1 team in our poll here? Could you believe it?
I need to step aside. I don't believe this. What?
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a no-brainer, and especially beating Alabama in Alabama. Alabama is a potential #1 seed as well, so that this is a no-brainer. I mean, look at all the Tier 1 wins. I mean, really, there's no other team has that profile. It's just head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd.
Yeah,
14-2 in quad one. And wow. Wow,
yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I don't even know that we spent much time on it. It's so good. And Dorman, number 2 overall. Also not a big surprise here, the Duke Blue Devils.
Yes, that's how I have it before yesterday, before the Bama Auburn game. This committee probably would have had Bama 2 if I had to guess, and then Duke 3. But with Bama's loss, I think they slide down. Duke keeps rolling over the ACC. They've had one loss. It was in Clemson last week, but Duke seems to be playing great basketball. I think with Alabama's loss at home to Auburn, people nicked them a little and moved them down to 3rd overall, I would say.
Well, this was the only one that was not completely unanimous. I actually would have still had Alabama number 2
Yeah.
overall.
Well, that's
I'm the
interesting.
only one that did that. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it was such a fine line for me.
Yeah,
Right.
it was, and you're splitting hairs, but it wasn't what, at least with me, it wasn't what David just said that they lost to Alabama and I moved them down. To me, the tiebreaker ended up, well, sort of. To me, the tiebreaker ended up being Auburn. They won at Alabama, they did not win at Duke. And to me, that when you're splitting hairs, that was the hair I split. And I've had Alabama at 2 all year long.
Very fair.
Yeah.
That's really fair. And
Yeah.
that's an argument that probably would have convinced me to go the other way had we debated this, Griggs, honestly.
Yeah.
Matt, number 3, Alabama. No surprise again.
No, that's why there's a clear top 3, and 2 and 3 are super close. Right now, Alabama's 3 just because they lost to Auburn yesterday, which that's clearly not a bad loss, but it was a loss, and now that's again. And if we're splitting hairs, Duke 22 and 3, Alabama 21 and 4, and when the
Yes.
profiles are pretty close, a 1-loss difference might mean that. But I said this is one. As long as even if they went 500 down the stretch, I think Bama would probably still hold on to the 1 seed given the strength of that schedule. And then I think there is a decent separation between these 3 and the next couple or 3 we'll talk about.
Well, it might be, but Rocco, this kind of surprised me. Everybody that voted, all 6 of us agreed that the number 4 overall team was the Florida Gators.
Well,
Do
I
you
think
agree?
I do, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I get it. Tennessee, you could argue, has the better overall strength of wins. You know, if you go in totality, those big non-conference wins at Illinois and Louisville, the quantity of wins against the field. I have Tennessee marked down as 2 extra wins if you count Vanderbilt as a field team, they have 3 extra wins compared to Florida against the field. They have more quad 1A wins. But at the end of the day, getting into this point of the season, it's February 16th tonight, and you only have 3 losses versus 5 losses. And you've both blown each other out. Florida's outperformed them in some of the performance measurements. So all together, that equals a little bit of a cleaner resume despite all the good wins that Tennessee has. And I think that explains it. Now, as soon as Florida drops one, if and when that happens, it'll be pretty easy to make the case for Tennessee.
Yeah, unfortunately, looking at their next games up, it's Tennessee that's got the tougher game for their next game
that's
than
right.
Florida does.
Florida's got the Sooners. Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Titel, number 5 overall. Probably still not a surprise. There was a little bit of divergence here, but not much. But Tennessee did come in number 5.
I'd like to congratulate Chad for getting through the Florida-Tennessee discussion without using the word aggregate for the first time in 3 weeks. That's fantastic. No, I think this is exactly where we should have them. I think that Duke would take care of them unless Tennessee's defense plays its A+ game, especially in Newark, where I think a lot of Duke supporters will be hanging out. The X factor I wanted to mention in the Florida-Tennessee disparity, because they each beat each other, as we know, is that Florida has their big man back, Micah Hamilton, after being out since last March with a horrific injury. He came back yesterday and was frankly great. Not so much a scorer, but 5 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals in 20 minutes. If the committee views a team as to their composition on Selection Sunday, I think that Florida gets an extra bump because of Micah's return.
All right. Go ahead, Griggs. I was going to ask you. I was going to say you were one of the few people that did not have Tennessee at number 5 overall. You've actually had the team that we got in at number 6, which was Houston.
Yeah, I like. We're splitting hairs a little bit here. I did like Houston a little bit more. A strong case can be made for Tennessee, but I thought the wins at Arizona and at Kansas, I thought Houston topped out a little higher. You know, they did lose to Auburn and Alabama, but so has Tennessee so far. So I just thought Houston was a little bit better. The one thing is Houston does have that loss to San Diego State, who is in the field, but Tennessee has not lost to anybody that's going to be outside the top 5 lines, maybe not even the top 4. So an argument,
Vanderbilt.
yeah, except
Vanderbilt's not going to be in the top 5 lines. They
yeah, it was
probably
a
will be in
road
the
game against a
field.
home court hero, but yeah, you're right. I thought I liked them both. Obviously, I had them 5-6, but I liked Houston a little bit more.
Yeah, Matt would have been with you, but Matt, I know you're a big predictive metric guys, and Houston has the better predictives.
Yeah, that's the one where I was, I guess, a hair surprised the committee had him 8th yesterday, but I guess they're a little bit lacking in quality wins, but they very much took care of that yesterday afternoon and that now.
Yeah.
And that's what I think they have strong enough wins to where their matchups like I gave them a real close look with them in Florida. I had Florida's had a little bit more at the a little bit more of the meat of their profile to where I had to take Florida. But I considered Houston for my final 1 seed, and
I did
I think
too.
they have a chance to be in play, especially like they run the table here, which I think is very doable.
Well,
And I would include a win at Texas Tech, but hey, Iowa State won there. I think Houston's better than Iowa State, so that tells me Houston can win at Texas Tech.
yeah, another thing about Houston, and I don't know if this entered your mind too, Matt, in looking at them for the one, and this isn't how the committee is supposed to evaluate teams, but you look at them and you're like, my God, 4 losses, 3 in overtime. Like they've lost 1 game in regulation, and it was to Auburn. And
Yeah, they
so,
had a little bit of a bad week in Vegas. Happens to
yeah,
us all. And
but
then, other than that,
yeah.
you lost to number 1, and then a 1-point OT loss against a fellow protected seed.
Yeah, but whether you lose in overtime or regulation, a loss is a loss, and that was ultimately why I put them at 5 and not 4. Was because it's like you can't just dismiss an
Yeah.
overtime loss; it's still a loss.
Lonzo and Florida very strong in the matchup. So it's one of those
Yeah,
4. Yeah. Florida by a hair, but this is one. I'm not sure if the real committee seriously consider Houston for a 1, given they did so far, but I think there's a case for them if they keep running like they do in the Big 12.
Let's take a look at the number 7 team overall. Mike, let me bring you back in, and here it is, number 7 overall, and already our 5th team from the SEC, Texas A&M.
Yeah, they're playing really well, and and the thing is, what's helped them too is that other teams have stumbled, like Purdue. That's the team that I think of that has stumbled. So somebody else is going to be up. Purdue slipped a little bit, and A&M has just played really well, and they're among the many elite teams in the SEC, and they deserve to be the number 7 seed, not number 7 seed, but number 7 team overall.
Yeah, it's probably the first profile that we've seen with a bit of
Well,
a
not to
wart on
mention
it
they
with
have
that
a
loss at
head-to-head win
UCF.
over Purdue, so right there.
Yeah, the bit of the wart with that loss at UCF. That was opening night. It's been a long time since they lost that game, though.
yeah.
Dorman, let me bring you back in for number 8 overall. And Titel and I both would not have had this team on the 2 line. Everyone else did, though, and that was Iowa State. Do you agree? Are you with me and Titel and dropping them down to the 3 line? Or are you with everyone else and having it on the 2?
I'm with Chad and Titel. I had Iowa State on the 3 line, but I'm not sure we have the same. Me and you guys had the same team on the 2 line moving up. After yesterday's performance in Purdue, I had Wisconsin on that at that last number 2.
Titel, let me ask you, because you and I both would have had Purdue here on the 2 line, and I would have had it. Do you think Purdue should have been dropped down for that loss?
To an excellent whiskey team on the road, I just don't see it. I understand they were fully healthy, and then
They were at
It was-
home.
Well, it was
it
down
was
the
hard.
road. Yeah, that's what played it to me. If it was on the road, you might live and forget it at home.
And it was to Wisconsin, who I think is fighting for that spot, and that's why I flip flopped them. But I think I'm in the minority there. But Wisconsin's playing really good.
Sorry, go ahead, Titel.
Dormer, you are correct that Wisconsin's playing good, and like I get the head-to-head argument. Believe me, I'm just telling you that Purdue's resume, that's a lot of Tier 1. That
Yes.
road loss to Penn State is a bad Tier 2 loss. I'll be, even on the road, I admit.
Yeah.
But
Hey.
I'm very impressed by their Tier 1.
Hey, somebody I know just won at Penn State yesterday. That's all.
Yeah. No doubt.
What a win to try to get in the Big Ten tournament.
Rocco, let me ask you about this Purdue Iowa State debate. One of my problems with Iowa State is they haven't every meaningful game they've had for like the last 3 or 4 weeks they've lost, it seems, and a few bad losses, including the K-State loss.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case study, and I will know more when it's really D-Day to seed them for real. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these last 6 games go. Obviously, that game at Houston will tell us a lot. Are they going to go in there and fight, or are they going to get blown out? I think that's important for this 2-3 seed discussion that we're in right now. And then they've got the Arizona home game at Hilton, and they've got the rematch with Kansas State. That would actually show the committee that it was just a Caleb Love hangover. That game was right after the Caleb Love shot. And I think it's human nature to come out a little flat after just being – that was such a devastating loss. That game was over. It was like Scott Hansen on NFL Red Zone. What does he always say? Where wins become losses and losses become wins.
Yeah,
well, that's what that Caleb Love shot did. And then they again, it's up to TJ Otts to get the team ready, but they were flat that day, and Kansas State was hot. Perfect storm to get blown out at home. I think they can undo a lot of that bad still. So that's why I'm looking forward to seeing what they got. I think where they're at right now, I like them more than most, which is weird because I was kind of an Iowa State hater, I guess, last year. But I like the fact that they've only lost, a limited amount of games, and they were very dominant up until that bad week. And I think at the end of the year, if you get to the end of the year and it was only like one bad week and a couple, respectable losses, they're a very strong team still.
Yeah, and I will also add, Chad, that Iowa State has looked so much better since Momcilovic has been back. In a lot of those losses, He was out. And I think that might play – there's still losses for Iowa State, but he is so key for them. They play so much better with him on the court. And all of a sudden, since he's been back, they look real good again. So I think that'll play a factor.
I guess I just need to see them play, not necessarily beat Houston, but be there with Houston, and that might change my mind on them. Let's go to the 3-line here. Number 9 overall, not a surprise. It is that Purdue team that we just discussed. And since we just discussed that, maybe we should move on to number 10. And Griggs, how about the other team we just discussed? Wisconsin does get in there.
Wisconsin. I've been high on this team all year long, as all of you have known. They were 10 on my seed list today. We got this one right. And again, I just want to emphasize, what a believer I've been in this team.
Yeah, that profile was so different with that win at Purdue. So different.
That changes the entire complexion of their profile. And I don't know, maybe it's just a mental stigma for me, but before I was saying, well, they haven't beaten anyone on the road that's going to be inside the bubble. And then they win against Purdue, and I'm like, wow, look at all the teams they've beaten on the road. I mean, it just completely mentally flipped, even though I'm looking at the same information. It just completely changed the complexion of it for me.
Well, one thing I'll say, this was their first road win against a tournament team, and not only a tournament team, but a team that we just ranked above them.
Seat, yeah. But no, I mean, it changed in I was the only one that wasn't there on Wisconsin, and I was just like, what in the hell impresses you about them? They don't even look, I don't want to say they looked bad, but they didn't look like a protected seed. At least maybe I was getting them on bad nights or something. But Badgers fans out there, you can quit sending me, well, you can keep sending me hate mail. I'm sure you still hate me, but no, you looked good last night. Wow, that was an impressive game.
Mike, this may surprise. 3 straight Big Ten teams. Number 11, how about your Wolverines? All the way up here on the 3-line.
Good job, committee. Like that one.
Yeah, I had them at 12. It's I think they were helped by 2 things. Arizona lost yesterday to Houston. Not a bad loss, but still, when you're talking about, splitting hairs. And then I think what helps Michigan is that they have 7 quad 1 wins, but 6 of them on the road. And I think that really helps them a lot. And they've won, 6 in a row, I believe. So that's another factor that works in their favor.
Yeah, and Matt, when we look at this Michigan profile, I mean, yeah, there's three tier two losses, but they're really not horrible losses. Two of those three we're going to be discussing at some point tonight.
Oh yeah, no, that's one. Like Wake and Oklahoma aren't terrible on a neutral core. That's one. Again, you have to delineate just because it falls into Q2 doesn't mean like at Minnesota that might as well be a Q3 loss in my eye. But the other two are pretty decent. So yeah, and I think with teams in this range all losing, especially Kentucky and Arizona, someone had to move up, and Michigan, you were lucky enough to you. It also helps they actually are the conference leader, which plays a touch in my eyes to where I don't think the Big Ten leader ought to be definitely a protected seed and probably should be a 2 or 3 seed.
Uh, Finish off our three line, Titel. Your Arizona team did not stay there. We would we ended up making that flip that people that we discussed already from what the real committee did. We got Texas Tech up there.
Can't argue. We split with them. I don't know the aggregate, so don't ask me. I hate watching this team. Like, they're not fun to watch, which is something I haven't said about a Wildcat team in a long time. And like, I certainly want them to win, of course, as a loyal alum. But just to see them raining these and missing three after three after three, and Waka can't stay on the court for more than 90 seconds without committing a foul. It's just like, I kind of don't know how they beat Iowa State and how they beat Texas Tech and how they're going to win a game in the Big 12 tourney. It's very distressing for me.
Yeah, there's that Arizona team up there on the right, and we actually had a debate on Twitter from one of our followers today, arguing that Texas Tech should be ahead of Iowa State, and I just want to throw it out there real quick here because I don't see it. Titel was a good comment to your bracket you posted today. Is there any reason why Texas Tech should all the way be up all the way over Iowa State right now?
I mean, they have a better signature win in terms of the road win at Houston way back in the day of February 1st. But no, I mean, they have tier 3. Iowa State doesn't. OAR likes Iowa State. J&G likes Iowa State, so I don't see it.
Yeah.
Lost to UCF at home. Yeah, Iowa State's just now. Again, we'll see what the season's not over yet. We'll see how things play out. Iowa State, they're trending a little bit sideways, as Chad alluded to earlier, and we kind of discussed. So,
Dorman, let me bring you back in here to start off the four line, and team with a huge win today. How about the Johnnies?
St. John's is playing phenomenal basketball. There's some good defense being played in this country. I don't think anyone better than the Johnnies. I have them exactly in the spot, so I agree with the committee. The one thing I worry about with the Johnnies come March is the outside shooting. They just don't have a shooter who just knocks it down consistently. And their defense is great, but if they run into a team who happens to be hot from three-point land, they could come up short by forcing threes or just not being able to hit them. So if there's one downside, it's St. John's on the outside hitting shots down, but their defense is awesome. Patino's on the bench. Kadari Richmond has experience. He knows what he's doing, takes the ball to the basket beautifully. I'm a big fan of the St. John's team.
They've got 4 losses, and they were all one-possession games.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so impressive.
Yeah.
Rocco, number 14 overall. We discussed Arizona, but we don't quite get there yet. We actually got that Michigan State team in there, our 4th Big Ten team in the protected seats. Do you agree?
A great win last night. First of all, you had great email earlier as well on the thread about Illinois having -2 points those last 6 minutes.
That was awesome.
This has got to be a record here. Illinois, the last 6 minutes of this game, scored, -2 points. They actually had 2 points taken off due to a goaltending review, did not score. That's probably never happened, not only in college basketball, maybe at any level, maybe never at any basketball ever. I don't know.
Right.
Just atrocious offensive efficiency for that last part of the game. I mean, just a statistical impossibility of below 0.
Well, I think at the end of the day, that result is really significant for a lot of reasons because Michigan State, as Ohio State continues to teeter-totter around the bubble, That road win's going to be good no matter what, because Ohio State's got great performance numbers, but we don't know, at any given moment they're either a tournament team or they're not. But Illinois is definitely that level. Their upside is crazy good, and Michigan State now has a bona fide resume at the top with that big road win, kind of like what Wisconsin got. So both the Big Ten teams that needed it got it yesterday, and they belong in this area. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how far to as more of a committee focused person. Kentucky was number 10 yesterday. We're already at 14 and we haven't seen their name. How far do they fall for losing on the road at Texas? I think the only reason they were 10 yesterday, because that was still high, the committee was higher than I was for sure. But they're obviously impressed with all the abundance of quad 1A wins in there. I mean, that's crazy. They have 7.
Mhm.
And that did not go away by losing at Texas. So that's still all there. All the stuff they liked is still there. So I'm just trying to figure out where Kentucky lands here with the group.
Well,
Um,
I actually would have had Kentucky in already because not only do they, in my opinion, did they have all those tier one wins, but look who they beat: the number 2 team, the number 4 team, and the number 5 team twice. That is
Right.
monstrous in my opinion. That's a lot better than Michigan State's 18 and 27 and 47 over there.
And they beat the number 6 team too, Chad. Texas A&M's on there too.
Yep, number 11 in the
7.
net right there.
Yeah, but sorry, on the seed list. On the
Oh
seed
yeah,
list.
yeah. Oh no,
Yeah,
I was talking just on the net numbers there, and I didn't I skipped over Gonzaga because Gonzaga I think is a fraudulent 10 net, but
very, very, yeah. But yeah, you're right, Rod. I mean, they valued those wins. I didn't have Kentucky as high as the committee. I'll just put it that way. I didn't have them like in
And
the
I didn't
30s
either.
or anything like that.
yeah,
but,
Greg's actually torpedoed Kentucky at our seed list. Yeah, that's one of the things that happened. Yeah,
Well,
but-
I
but-
didn't. I didn't.
I
I didn't
had
have
them
them as a
12.
protected seed, but I didn't have them that low.
Mhm.
I mean,
No, you did not have him as a protected seed.
And I think
Yeah.
I'm in the middle. I had Kentucky 12 on going into the show, so I'm not offended by them putting them 10, but at the same time, going down this low and having Michigan State above them doesn't feel right to me.
Actually, they didn't even come in next. Dorman, that was one of the teams we discussed at the top of the show here. Your Arizona Wildcats, who were higher than this on the committee show yesterday also.
Yeah, higher than the committee, but then they lost to Houston at home. Nothing terrible, obviously, losing to Houston, but at home you'd like to win. I'm with Rocco. Even being an Arizona alum, I have Kentucky with all those quad 1 wins stacked up there. I like those more than Arizona's wins. I just do. The Duke game sticks out to me. That's they're on the 1 line. Florida on the 1 line. Tennessee, our 5th overall team in our bracket tonight. Those wins, 2 of those. Those wins just keep coming. Arizona's, there's a bunch of them, but to me, the Texas Tech and the Iowa State, I'll give it the West Virginia, 3 teams that are going to be in the tournament. I like Kentucky's wins more.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last team on the protected seeds, Mike. We've discussed them a million times. Kentucky does slip in there.
Yeah, I had them rated a lot higher because their wins, their top-notch wins are all outstanding. I mean, to beat 2 number 1 seeds and twice Tennessee, that's just outside the number 1 seed, beat them twice. So I'm kind of surprised that they're at 16, but they do belong on the 4 line. So I mean, I guess that's better than nothing. So,
At
but
the
I
end of
do
the
think
day,
they should be higher
well,
than 16.
yeah,
it,
I,
in,
I was going to say at the end of the day, I think we got them on the right line. Actually, playing in the South region, they're probably in the right region also. So that's
Yeah.
the good
The
news.
one thing I'd watch out with Kentucky and also Arizona, both loss accumulation, and in the case of Kentucky's 11-8 against in meaningful games, so that's where they're okay for that, but they got to keep watching a little bit because a bad stretch, they might be 500-ish against meaningful games come Selection
to,
Sunday.
to build it, and
Right,
maybe I'm not
right.
I think I had them around 18 or 19, which may sound low, but I mean they're ranked 18th. If you pull them up again, Chad, the big wins are certainly there. It's not that I don't think they top out high. They top out as high as a 1 seed typically does, but they've also like not held serve in the true road games. And it's one thing to not win at Ole Miss or Clemson, but Texas and Georgia and Vanderbilt and Ohio State, in Arkansas at home, and the accumulation of losses to teams that are nowhere near protected seeds is something that no other protected seed has done. In I had him 18. Where did I have him? 18 or 7? I had him on the
19.
5 line. 19. Okay, I had him at 19. So it's not like I had them down on the 7 or 8 line. That's a good profile. But what is the one thing that they don't have in common? If you're asking me why I ranked them where I did, that's why every other protected seed that we've put in this field has held serve against non-protective seeds away from home.
The other interesting thing there, to your point, Griggs, is, one of the very popular resume metrics is SOR. And of course, on the predictive KenPom, you have 19 on both ends of the stick, which is a higher 5 seed. So without those dynamic wins, and that's why I thought it was really interesting, because sometimes if you're just trying to check your math, if you will, of course you should go through the process of who did you beat from the field, who did you beat on the road first, and then use the metrics at the very end to check. It's like a measurement to check your work. Well, those measurements are telling you they're a 5 seed. So to have them all the way at 10th overall that's where I was a little surprised too.
Yeah. And they value where you top out. I think that was very obvious.
It was very obvious
for you guys that do try and guess the committee. Look at where teams top out.
I'm going to go one seed line at a time now. Go all 4 of the 5 seeds. And Titel, on the 5 line, we've got Marquette, Missouri, Kansas, and Ole Miss.
Like it. I think Arizona might beat Ole Miss only because Ole Miss has to travel all the way to Seattle for that one, but still tough. I like St. John's chances. Patino against Self in March is about as great as it gets, but Kansas is certainly going in the wrong direction. Izzo is great in March too, so good luck, Missouri. And I'll defer to our friend Matt about whether he can handle the other Wildcats.
It'd be a fun game. And put it this way, of the other 4 seeds, I'd much rather play them than, say, Michigan State, St. John's, or even probably Arizona. Kentucky, by far the weakest on the defensive end of those.
Okay. Dorman, any thoughts on these teams from you here, especially Kansas, who I believe was in the committee's top 16, but lost another game.
They sure did. I had Illinois sneaking around right there, but also they lost at home yesterday, so they weren't the team in my mind to move up. You could talk about teams like Memphis, UCLA. Maryland had a nice home win today. I have Illinois ahead of Kansas, even after the weekend. I just do. I like Illinois' wins. A more 10-9 to the top 2 tiers, 9-8 Kansas right there. It's tight. I know the overall 22 Kansas comes in higher there. I just like Illinois' wins, and they're stacking them up more than Kansas. When I watch Kansas, there's something amiss. I can't figure out what it is. They have all the talent in the world. They have experience in Dickerson and Harris. There's just something missing there that Kansas can't put it together and win a game like in Utah last night. I have Illinois slightly ahead of Kansas.
I'll tell you what, Dorman, let me just real quick here.
Sure.
I agree with you, everything you said about Kansas. I think that team is going completely in the wrong direction. Illinois is not the team that I would personally be in favor of here, just because I look at Illinois and they have used a great, as far as road wins, they haven't beat anybody on the road that's coming in this field.
Yeah.
Well, at Oregon, actually. So
Neither's
I'll give
Kansas.
that.
Yeah.
But everyone wins at Oregon.
Neither is Kansas, right?
Neither's Kansas. Yeah, they suck away from home. I mean, Kansas.
They at least have the Michigan State win.
Yeah.
Michigan State and Duke at neutral courts.
Yeah.
Who'd you have, Chad?
Who would I have had up
Yes.
next? Let me just double check my notes here. I probably would have had UCLA up here actually.
I can live with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I
I like
agree.
them. Yeah, I like them a lot too. But
But on that note, though, let's go ahead and take a look at the 6th line here. And Rocco, this 6th line, there is that UCLA team I mentioned, Maryland, who got the big one today, Creighton, despite their loss, Mississippi State, and no Illinois. Dorman, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're missing a team. Oh, never mind. They got up to the 5. I missed Missouri already. Sorry.
Oh,
about
sorry.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Missouri got there in
yeah.
the 5 line. Yep.
Yeah. I guess it's okay. I'm trying to figure out where Mississippi State belongs, but I think overall I'm pretty good with it. Certainly this is UCLA's comfort zone at this point in the season based on their big mix of results. They did get the road win at Indiana on Friday night. That was good enough to split the road trip to Illinois and Indiana. And then I think with Mississippi State sweeping the Egg Bowl, promising position. I think they'll be, for me, they'll be teetering 6-7 in the morning, but I'm good with it. Creighton, I'm a little interested after taking another loss. They lost twice this week. We might be due for a dip here. I think I'd rather go maybe like a Clemson, even a St. Mary's, perhaps, in that spot. Unless I'm forgetting somebody, or maybe even we have Memphis yet?
No, I've not seen
Memphis,
Memphis yet.
Memphis
that's
shot
today,
themselves.
I would, yeah, but I'm okay. I'm not.
Ouch. Wichita State.
Yeah.
I'm a realist about Memphis. I mean, if they're in a whole different world than anybody else they're compared to, having to go on all these road games to weird places, the travel in the Americans not. I mean, I guess that with the cross country conferences, you could argue those were crazy too, but you don't do that every week. Memphis does when they travel, so they were going to lose at some point. I would stick up for Memphis over a lot of those teams I mentioned before them.
Yeah, and it is hard to go to the Roundhouse. I don't think that this kills them, but it definitely bruises a rib losing at
I agree.
Wichita.
Yeah, it's like it's everybody's Super Bowl when they play Memphis. Yeah. So and they hadn't lost any of those Super Bowls yet until today.
And I don't have tonight's score in front of me, but Louisville's in this area right around here, even higher than Creighton, possibly.
Louisville's going to win the game.
They're up by 14 with 4.5 to go.
Yeah.
Just a quick note. Most of these brackets were submitted by 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. Notable games that went final was Oregon got the win over Rutgers, and Louisville putting the finishing touches on Notre Dame. Not factored in, although no surprises there. So either with those two results. Back here, I guess, Matt, what about this Maryland team here? This team is on the rise, I think, are they not?
Yeah, definitely. I think, them and UCLA are the two strongest sixes on this line. They are in this, I think, in the 5 seed discussion, whereas the other ones are sixes now. I'd have St. Mary's over Creighton, but yes, I think Maryland, UCLA, strong sixes. I think in contention for the 5 line, and would definitely be safe if we were doing a cross country vote on this. Well up there, and one of them might sneak in. And that especially because I know sounds like Kansas has a couple of haters in the room, so UCLA or Maryland might have snuck it over Kansas if we did this cross country vote style.
Dorman, let's go to the 7 line. I'm going to ask you about these teams. There is that Illinois team you brought up, both Clemson, both the ACC teams, Clemson and Louisville, and Memphis, the 4 teams we've just been discussing.
I'm with Matt, though. I would have snuck St. Mary's in here. I think St. Mary's is really underrated, really a real strong basketball team. Doesn't get the attention maybe that they should. Everyone's more worried about what Gonzaga isn't doing. I think it is a story of what St. Mary's is doing. I know they don't have those, they're not able to stack up the tier 1 wins because of the schedule, but St. Mary's is a fantastic basketball team.
Yeah, Mike, when you look at the St. Mary's team, though, I mean, if they really want to make the case that they belong high in this bracket, it's coming up this weekend at Gonzaga, is it not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, St. Mary's, barring a disaster, they should be in the field. But if they want to move up, that may be their last chance, to beat Gonzaga on the road. Well, maybe another chance would be to beat Gonzaga on a neutral court, but then that would probably be an automatic bid and make the at-large discussion moot. But yeah, St. Mary's is it's about right for them to be in the 7, 8 area, and then but really but because of their conference, this is their last chance for a quality win is on the road at Gonzaga.
Yeah, a lot of us would have had St. Mary's up here on this line. Griggs, you're the one torpedoed them, honestly.
Yeah, well, I like them, but they've kind of let me down a little bit. Maybe that loss to San Francisco, and they just don't top out quite as high. It's like I like St. Mary's, but Clemson's looked red hot. They had the big win against Duke, and while they did lose to Georgia Tech, they've looked pretty good overall. Memphis, I really like what they did out of conference. I know they lost today, but I thought they've done enough to outweigh that. And Louisville's red hot, and Illinois is just all over the place. They're kind of tough to place, but in placing them, I still like them slightly better than St. Mary's. So I know that that's weird to say. I really do like St. Mary's, but I don't know who on this line I put them ahead of.
Oh, you can put just hang Illinois upside down from the rafter. Oh, that's
Oh,
Oh, oops.
Oh, Twitter's been on. Twitter's been on.
Not their night yesterday. -2 scoring in the last
Yeah.
six
and,
and a half
and an
minutes.
upside down retired banner for Terrence Shannon
Aye.
Jr.
Well, they deserve to lose, I guess.
Tytel, let's go to the 8 line here. And we do see that St. Mary's team coming in there
Yeah.
against Alabama in the Midwest. The other 3 teams, though, Oregon, who looks
Hard
like
to
maybe
place.
they're hard to place, UConn and Gonzaga. And yes, UConn lost to Seton Hall.
It is unbelievable. If you had asked me a couple weeks ago, while McNeely was still injured, I would have said UConn was going to be the most dangerous 8-9 seed in this tournament and capable of upsetting a 1 seed. I don't see it now. Obviously, like if you want to not bet against anybody in March, it's Dan Hurley. But I think Duke will destroy UConn in Raleigh. As far as the other ones, the Ducks have been really leaking oil, so good for them to get back on track tonight at home. It's a shame for St. Mary's. I think if they beat Gonzaga on the road and keep winning, then they will end up as close to a 6 seed or something, which is good because I don't think they want any piece of Alabama. And ditto the Zags. They have been leaking oil for a while now. So as much as I love Mark Few, I think his old West Coast friend Todd Golden might have the advantage in that one in San Francisco.
Rocco, I got to ask you about this Gonzaga team because this is one of the hardest teams for me to place.
Yeah,
When you look at those predictive metrics, you're like, wow, 5 seed, and when you look at the resume, you're like, oh, bubble team. I don't. What do you do with that? Maybe just do what we did, put them on the 9 line,
Yeah.
8-9.
Well, I think one of the easiest things you could say about Gonzaga is just look at the scores of the games. Nothing else. Every time they're in a close game late, they lose. Besides that Arizona State game, but they won that one by 8. That was close with 2 minutes to go. They just have a weird issue down the stretch where they're not clutch. They make mistakes. And in fact, I think because of the fact in so many of their other games they dominate, they kind of get lost. Like, oh my gosh, we're actually getting punched back. There used to be, if you think of it in a boxing analogy, if you're used to just dominating your opponent, that's your mentality. And, every once in a while you get punched back, you kind of don't know how to react. And it's played out that way down the stretch for them, which is surprising because they've been through the wars. But that's what we saw last year. And this was about the time they turned it on last year. We just haven't seen that quite yet. Maybe that starts next Saturday, as you said earlier.
And besides that, their other 3 remaining regular season games are all road trips, and none of them is exactly easy. So it's
And look-
interesting
look
last
when-
2 weeks.
It helps them.
look when those quad 1 wins came. Also, not much since November 18th.
Their
Yeah.
only win, the quad 1 and 2, their only win since November is their home
Yep.
win over San Francisco.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that win at
Right.
San Diego State, they went there. San Diego State, a pretty good team, and this was just an electric. You want to talk about going into the war, the show, and this was amped up even by show standards. And Gonzaga went there and won. And at that point, I think all of us thought, well, this is a team that can go to the Final Four. I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't know. You
Right.
mentioned being through the wars, and you bring up a good point, but what the hell happened? Like, if anyone was built to withstand the wars this year, I thought it would have been this Gonzaga team.
Yeah,
I
look
agree.
at the,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And I would just call out the 2 games against the West Virginia overtime loss down in the Bahamas, and then the Oregon State loss in Corvallis. Both of those games, they were dead in the water a few times. They kept coming back, but then when they actually tied the score, they got really, really tight again, and they the possessions just look totally different from when they're playing with the lead. It's just it's like 2 different teams. Like when they're playing with the lead versus when they're playing either tied or from behind. It's a big part of basketball. Like we could probably pick apart other teams in this way too. It's just I think Gonzaga is the easiest one to call out.
and one of the amazing things is though you look at them, and they don't have a win against a team that we've put in the field yet.
Yeah, they don't.
Right.
Which is
Right. What
And
limits,
yet,
it
if
limits
they-
their seed. It limits their seed.
It's right. But if they win these 4 games, they'll be favored in all 4 of them. They win those, they might be a 5 or 6 seed. Like it's because how much that would alter their profile, go from 5-7 to 9-7 against the top 2 tiers, and have nothing below that. you're totally. I think you're looking like a 6 seed, maybe even 5 seed.
And a three and
That's
three more
crazy. Like,
and 3 more road wins, Matt. That'd be
yeah,
3 more road wins. Yeah.
Let's take a look at the 9 seeds here, and which are potential first round matchups as well. Oregon gets Baylor. UConn gets Nebraska. St. Mary's, New Mexico. Gonzaga, Utah State. A couple of West Coast Conference Mountain West matchups there.
The Joby Fortson line. There you go. I know who didn't submit a bracket.
Dorman, your thoughts on these 4 teams that we just dropped in?
I didn't want to say anything while we're just discussing Gonzaga, but I have New Mexico. I like this Lobos team a lot. I think the resume is actually stronger than Gonzaga's when I was looking at it today.
Especially what they did today.
Especially with what they did today, yes. They had a big home win today against Utah State. It just goes – I like the way this New Mexico team is trending. Patino has the team playing really well. It's not going to matter a whole lot. I thought they were going to be on the 8 or the 9. They're going to play teams like Gonzaga, so it's not that big of a deal, except who's wearing white. But I think there's a lot of teams in this line that could beat Gonzaga. That'll be a really interesting game. I like our 9 seeds here. Great job.
And let me throw a little Titel stat out there for you, Mr. Titel. Both New Mexico and St. John's, coached by Patino, both teams 22-4 and 2 games up in the conference standings of their leagues.
Wow.
That does sound like me. I like that.
Wow.
And both in the Midwest.
Yeah, they could possibly meet here in the regional semifinal in this bracket we just put together. Although somebody would have to knock off Alabama for that to happen. Let's take a look at the 10 line here. Matt, we got there Vanderbilt, who avoids the first 4. West Virginia, Ohio State, and San Diego State. I know Rocco is throwing fits about Ohio State, but let's talk about the other 3 first. Then maybe we'll dig into the Buckeyes.
yeah. I think looking through Vanderbilt's the one that, below the SEC that they're still above 500 in the top 3 quadrants. So that's how basically they got the low SEC. I had to have held my nose there to put Texas at the very bottom, but like
I don't like
they're
that.
they're pretty they're like a little bit clear of the first 4 Vanderbilt. That's basically why. And that's it. It's I don't know how we feel is, but there we go. Like I said, 9-8 versus 2-3 under 500. Like Georgia's now 2 under 500. Texas is 2 under 500. Arkansas, I think, is still at least 2, and that's
2.
just there. So many losses early. They didn't play that good of a schedule on the conference either. So I think that's how Vandy just above that fray. Now that said, look at that schedule. Oof, but you better win your home games in that because that maybe win at Georgia.
Yeah, and the other teams here, West Virginia, San Diego State, and we talk about not putting in teams that are 2 games over 500, under 500 against the top 3 tiers, but here we did on the 10 line, and Rocco, we do this every week with you, I think, but and I would have been with you. I would have had Ohio State out still after the loss that they just suffered, but why is everyone else putting them in? Maybe you and I are wrong about them.
Well, I think everybody can look at it differently, and I'm totally cool with that. It's been 3 straight. Tomorrow will be 3 straight Mondays where they're out, and I've had 2 straight Fridays where they're in because they keep yo-yoing and tiptoeing that line. I think if they land the plane, they have 5 games left. They play Northwestern at home at both LA schools, so we'll see how they navigate that trip. That'll be critical. Hosting Nebraska, tournament level team, that part doesn't matter. Just get the win, and then road Indiana, right? So very reasonable for the Buckeyes to finish 3-2. To me, I don't care which 3 they beat. Get those 3 of those 5, they're going to be in. If they go 2-3, they're obviously 3 games under 500 by then. So they're going to make the plane's either going to land 3 under 500 or 1 under or even better because they are good. I'm not trying to sit here and say they're not good. It's just you can't be 15-11, 7-8 in the league, and then of course 2 games under 500 when you take away quad 4, and expect to be worthy of an at-large when there's all these other options. That's really all I'm saying. And so the way I project the bracket out is a snapshot in time, and I know others might not, and that's totally fine. And as a snapshot in time, there's no way I can include them at this moment.
Well, what they really need then, Rocco, is Campbell to get red hot and push that game, push them up into tier 3.
That was
Yeah, Campbell and Youngstown are both close enough that like they finish their conference season strong, get some blowouts in there, and maybe make a run their conference tournaments. Like that, dude, it's weird, but hey,
I
all of a sudden you're 11-11, and if those two go up to tier 3.
I don't think. Well, I don't know. They might. This is where I am with Ohio State. I'm not in love with this profile, and actually, there's a team that I thought might get on this line that I like more than them that isn't in yet. But
What team?
part of it is I just can't seem to get them out of my bracket, considering they've beaten Purdue and Kentucky away from home. No one else around the bubble has done that. And when I look at the rest of the bubble, I don't know if anybody else had this experience. I get done with my list and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I had to have missed something or someone. I mean, how the hell is Ohio State where I have them? And I went back through again and realized I hadn't looked. It's a weak bubble, and it always is before the end of the year. I think it typically gets stronger even during conference tournaments, but they just seem to have done more than a lot of teams that we haven't taken yet. But God, they're not. Yeah, they're not that good. I don't particularly like it. I just can't seem to get them out of my bracket.
Well, they lose a lot of. They're actually like a mini Gonzaga, if you just look at the scores too. Like
Yeah.
today was 80-80 with a minute and a half to go, and they found a way to lose. And they've done that in a bunch of games, which is why their net's still so really good. Because when they dominate, they dominate. Washington, I mean, obviously not a great team by any means, went there and that game was over in 5 minutes. Like they destroyed Washington. And they've handled their business like that. So I'm not saying they're not good. It's just the difference between being a tournament level team is having that ability at least half the time. When you're in an 80-80 game like they were today, just win half the time in those scenarios. And they're losing most of the time. And that to me is like, you belong in this new Fox tournament.
Well, we'll see how many losses also, or 11 losses already. You figure a 12th in the conference tournament and, 14, 15 loss Ohio State team, Titel, that's a lot of losses if they just go 2-3 or 3-2.
A ton, which is why I think we can all agree, maybe not, but that if they win all 5 of their remaining games, I think they're in.
Oh, definitely.
They're probably worth one.
Oh,
Easy,
yeah.
easy.
Oh, yeah.
Think?
Oh, yeah.
And I assume we also agree if they lose out,
We just
they're
put
out.
them in.
I think they're in with 3. I think they're in with 3 wins, honestly. And that's like,
Yeah, I
me being
agree.
very-
Because that would be
I'm being
18.
I'm being very forgiving on them
Yeah,
because
15-11, 18-13, and 14th. Yeah, 18-14 because of the conference tournament. So I agree, Rocco.
yeah, it's just the Purdue and Kentucky games matter, and then they're gonna, they'll do more as well. And it's no disrespect at all. It's just you got to win enough games. You can't take on too much water in your boat, as Griggs would say.
Yeah.
Let's roll over here to the 11 line, and
And
Dorman.
they did have that win against Doug Gottlieb.
Dorman, I'm going to reveal 3 of the teams on the 11 line. Only one of them was an at-large team. The other 2 were teams that actually ended up sandwiched among our first 4, but would be auto bid winners. I'm actually revealing the entire 11 line. That was a mistake. I didn't mean to show that first 4 game, but we did. BYU avoided the first 4. Drake and UC San Diego sandwiched in there, and an Oklahoma UC Irvine game in the first 4. We got 2 Big West teams in.
2 Big West brackets.
I knew Rocco would exalt.
Yeah.
The question I ask did people take the Drake loss today into this?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I had them higher
They're still in
before
first
they
place,
lost
aren't
today.
they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like in the my
Isn't
top
Drake still
11
in
to
first
bottom
place
10
in the
before the
VC?
loss.
Yeah, so Drake's in for now.
Before today, what I had him as I had him getting in as an at-large, even without winning winning Arch Madness. With the loss today,
The margin
This
of
is
error is
get-
very thin.
very thin, Mike. Very thin. I'm not sure they can take another loss. I think it would probably be the end of them.
Who's it not
and that's-
before Arch Madness?
Correct.
Right. I think
Maybe
that is
maybe either, Matt. I'm not sure if they can
I
take
think
another
they'd
loss.
be okay on 4 losses.
Okay.
That 5th
I
one
hope.
might be the water break, the break of the dam.
I hope you're right. I love this conference. I think this Drake team can make some really good teams sweat. I like this Drake team. I think their coach phenomenal. This Ben McCollum has done an exceptional job. But when you look at the resume, you just saw Ohio State with some really big wins. And then we're talking about those teams right around the same spot. They have beaten Purdue and Kentucky. Here we're looking at two teams, Kansas State not in the tournament, and Vanderbilt, as of today, yes. So I think it's real close, but I do agree with everything we did on the 11 line. And I love
Okay,
the Big West.
look,
having
Listen,
two
compare
bids.
them to Irvine. They have
Yeah.
two Q1 wins out of conference. I put Irvine in basically a lot. Well, that's winning at San Diego, but also the two Q2 wins I liked. Getting that is a nice thing for what a mid-major can basically do on a conference. Short of if they were, especially in days now where the multi-team events are going away. What Irvine did winning at Northern Iowa, winning at Belmont, I like that enough to throw them in along with the big UC San Diego win.
And
But then,
CSUN.
if you look at Drake compared to them, I think Drake is solidly ahead of Irvine.
I agree.
okay. Let me ask a couple of other teams here. BYU, Titel got in above the first four, and Oklahoma here was our top rated first four team. BYU maybe heading up, but two teams heading in opposite directions maybe here.
Yes, Oklahoma did their work early, as all Arizona fans know, sadly, and the Michigan fans know, sadly. BYU is doing it a little late with the Baylor and West Virginia wins in the past 30 days. Plenty of opportunities left for both teams, although it's weird. It seems like BYU has the higher opportunities in terms of Arizona and Iowa State on the road, a couple of top 10 opportunities. We look at Oklahoma, all 6 games in the top 31 of the net. So I don't know whose schedule is easier now that I think about it, because they both look pretty tough.
Yeah, but Rocco, Oklahoma, I think they may have torpedoed themselves with losing a home game to LSU yesterday.
And the way they lost it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, God. The way they lost
3-9 in the
game,
conference, though. That's
yeah, the way they lost the game was so
Stupid.
awful. I mean, awful. I was watching it live. It was unbelievable. Anyway, it's a body of work, but you could hold your nose and throw them in Dayton right now, but you look at the remaining schedule, which is all we have left to look at. They go to Gainesville coming up. They go to Oxford, and they go to Austin in an ultimate bubble-licious finale. And they got that great Missouri team coming to town. I can't see them beating Missouri even at home right now. Kentucky's tough. They could finish 0-6.
Yeah,
They really could.
and that's one of the reasons why I think that we got on the screen here two teams going completely opposite directions. I think you're right. Oklahoma may be out of chances here.
Yeah, pull them up again. If Oklahoma goes 0-6, they're so far outside the bubble. But if you look at
they're looking for a coach
if
they go 0-6. Yeah.
If you look at they're looking for a coach. But in any given year, when you look at teams that are on the bubble and you look at who gets selected and who doesn't, one of the tiebreakers, we saw it last year with Virginia getting selected, is did you beat somebody else that's in the field away from home? And Oklahoma has. They did it in spades. They did,
3 times.
Yeah. And nobody else on the bubble has done that. And I think they're going to get a lot of leeway, but being that far below 500 in conference might not even have them on the bubble at all. I know we just selected them, but good God.
None of those 3 wins were on a campus, though. They were on an island.
You're right, but
so it's a little different. It's a little different.
Yeah. Well, I say that, Rod. Well, it again, who cares what the real committee does for what we're doing? But last year, people were surprised when Virginia was selected, but nobody else on the bubble. They had that win on against Florida in Charlotte the first week of the season, and it was the only team nobody else that wasn't selected had a win away from home against anybody else in the field. And I just think that is a common tiebreaker.
And Virginia won at Clemson. I think that was actually the big one.
That was a conference game, but yeah, they did.
Yeah, it was a win against the field on the road on campus.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the last 2 teams at the first 4. Matt, our final 2 teams in were Texas and Wake Forest. That's our other first 4 game. Winner going up against Kansas, a potential Kansas-Texas old Big 12 game there.
And Wake is a weird case to where you thought the home loss against Florida State would wreck them. They go win at SMU, and I think if they had to go 1-1 this week, they went the right 1-1. and that they're still. And for me, the big thing for me is the resume: 34 wins against bubble, 33 strength of record. I had them outside of Dayton. I think either just outside of Dayton or the first team in Dayton, but I think they are a little further in even. And I'm assuming the predictive metrics a little bit on this one, although I think it's a case of they were junk out of conference, but played pretty well in the ACC. And I know the ACC ain't great this year, but still, I think they've turned their level of play around to where I gave a little bit of a leeway on a not great non-conference, although they did beat Michigan, and then how they've been in ACC play. I think they're in right now. That said, don't go be losing to NC State, and that don't lose a home game. Good Lord, don't lose another home game, and then and maybe don't lose by 45 against Duke.
Yeah, Titel, we got that Texas team in. Again, another team that here is 2 games under 500 against the top 3 quadrants. Although New Mexico State bordering on going to tier 3, they need a few wins. But the Longhorns here, did we do right by putting them in?
Yes, but we did wrong by not putting them ahead of UCSD. Like Rocco, you love UCSD. Would Texas not beat them by double digits, or am I missing something?
I think it'd be the opposite. I think it'd be the opposite. I think UCSD would win by double digits.
Hold on.
Significant coaching edge.
1 second here. I'm going to clarify.
On you, baby.
I'm going to clarify one thing here. Because Oklahoma and Texas are in the same conference, I had to switch Texas and UC Irvine. Texas was actually 1 spot against UC San Diego in the overall seed list, but there had to be a little bit of team swapping there to avoid the Oklahoma-Texas game in the first 4. So you are right, Titel. We did get them above UCSD by 1.
I think Trey Johnson would score 30, and UCSD is a great team. Like, don't get me wrong, but Texas's quad 1 is like ridiculous, and UCSD's is almost non-existent, right?
Well, they won twice in quad 1.
At Utah State.
Did the field.
Yeah.
At
Utah
Utah
State
State.
On their
the
campus.
Eaters. And at the Eaters, I was there for that. I would say this. I would say it's interesting because I like Texas's talent. I know Jordan Pope from Oregon State was like an incredible player, and he's just another guy on Texas. They have a boatload of talent. They have SEC level, NIL, all the whole 9 yards. But UC San Diego's got a bunch of gritty, international, former Division II, super cohesive. You can't break them. You can't. Like mentally. And I've seen Texas mentally break over 10 times, or somewhere around 10 times already this year. So that's where it's just like, unless Texas got up by 20 in the beginning of the game, there's definitely no way I'd bet against UC San Diego down the stretch in a game like that, because they're just so mentally tough. They're old. I mean, everybody's old these days that's this good, but that's just what's so impressive about them. It's that old school, like mid-major approach, but they've got a different flavor. Tate Jones is probably either the best mid-major player in the country or top 3. I think those of us that know the Tritons know that. And he's incredibly hard to game plan because he has unorthodox decision-making, unorthodox body control movements, and he's learning how to shoot threes on the fly. You can just look at his stats throughout the year. And they have other weapons all around him with Tyler McGee, Chris Howell, etc. So anyway, Titel, it would be a lot of fun. We'd have a lot of fun with that.
I'm going to reveal the top 4
UCSD would win.
I'm going to reveal 4 of the top 5 teams out. Then I'll reveal the 5th team out. Actually, top 4 teams out that did not make the field at all were Arkansas, Georgia, VCU, and Indiana. And I just say 4 out of the top 5 because I'm also going to reveal the Missouri's opponent over here in the East region, and that would be George Mason. I mentioned that because actually under the way the ranking went, Arkansas, Georgia, George Mason, VCU, Indiana in that order. So we would have had both Mason and VCU close to an at-large bid, which suddenly brings up the question, Dorman, is there a real shot now at a too big A10 with Mason and VCU?
So. I have Mason ahead of all of those teams we just had in that group. So I think it's that close. I think they're right. They're either the last team in on my board or the first team out. I just have them ahead of Georgia and Georgia and all the who else do we have on that last list? Arkansas. Yes, Arkansas. They're better than Arkansas. I don't get the Arkansas argument. Every time I watch, it's they lose. They won some games. Yes, they get opportunities left and right. I don't think this Arkansas team is that great, and they had a chance yesterday and blew it.
Can
Yeah, can
anybody?
you show Dorman the quad one wins that Arkansas has? Maybe
The
then he'll get it.
opportunities.
Again, 8 and 10 against those top three tiers, Titel. And there is no team that's going to move up from that tier 4 to tier 3 for the
How do you
Razorcats.
think Mason would do against Kentucky, Michigan, and Texas? Honestly,
Oh, they get crushed.
thank you.
Yeah.
But
I
I think Texas might score 40 points against Mason. Like
I think Mason is a better team than you think.
Yeah.
no, I think Mason might. If anybody does, anybody else other than Mason, and I know VCU's way up in the net. They also have a strength of schedule around 400.
Yeah.
Can anyone other than Mason? I think the only way the A10 gets 2 is if Mason somehow gets inside the bubble or on it, and someone else wins the conference tournament.
Yeah, I think it's Mason sweeps VCU. Maybe VCU ties for them in the regular season, loses them in the conference tournament final. I think VCU would have a shot at that large, even with I know the.
That is a
I take a fresh look at VCU, and I didn't even with that non-conference. I like them better than a couple of these SEC teams.
I'll tell you,
And Titel, I understand your point of who's better, George Mason or Kentucky, Michigan, and Texas. But every March we see teams like Mason from the Atlantic 10 or teams like Drake from the Valley. They beat those teams, but they beat those teams in the tournament all the time. I know. Yeah, I would agree with you. Kentucky and Michigan are definitely better. But in a one-game scenario, Mason is experienced. They're tough.
Yeah.
They're gritty, and they just keep winning.
Look at Duquesne. Look at what Duquesne did last year in a one-game
Yeah.
experience. They put BYU in a pretzel.
Well, that was BYU.
Mason's profile, if they get this win at VCU this coming up weekend, that makes his profile a lot more interesting too. That is going to be another quad 1 win there.
Yeah, I think Mason might have a path. I don't think anyone else does. I think Mason's the only team that can get inside the bubble.
But here's VCU on the left, Griggs.
Yeah,
they get
I don't
another
like
win,
that.
if they-
I think that's pretty lousy, especially if they don't get the wins against George Mason.
There's 5 road wins in the top 2 quads. That's better than almost the entire bubble by itself.
Yeah, they
But-
lost to Seton Hall, they lost at St. Louis, and they have a strength
did
of schedule
UConn.
around 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
And
not
the
for
Seton
selecting
Hall loss-
UConn.
And the Seton Hall loss is getting better, Griggs.
Let's go back real quick. The rest of the teams that actually got a little bit of vote, a little bit of love. North Carolina, San Francisco, Pitt, SMU, Xavier, Boise
Emphasis
State,
on a little bit of
Kansas
luck.
State, Cincinnati, North Texas. None of these teams, one or two of you may have had these teams in your field, but not many. I will throw the San Francisco Dons up real quickly. They're a team that I made a case for last week. Still real interesting with that Gonzaga home game and an Oregon State road game to go. But Rocco, I don't think they're there yet. I know you want to make the case for them too, but
I do. I don't have them in. I just think the St. Mary's win was impressive and made it actually a possibility. But obviously, they didn't do enough at the top still. They need something to back it up.
Sorry, Matt, you also had a comment about these teams?
Oh, yeah, that's what San Francisco I had fairly close. I really want to give them a look. And then the one we're gonna hate, I don't think North Carolina is all that far away.
I think they're pretty far. They're all the way down.
I would love them
Hill.
to be very far and all that, but
Well, look,
The
They're
bubble's
not
pretty
that
bad.
far.
I mean,
they're not that far. And I heard the committee chairman is tight with North Carolina, so I agree, Matt. They're very close.
let me put North Carolina.
he
let me
couldn't
also-
even say Duke on the show.
Yeah, he couldn't even say it.
But Mike, here's that
hilarious.
North Carolina on the left, Indiana on the right. They both have one thing. Actually, North Carolina does have a kind of a bad loss at home to Stanford. Indiana, not a single bad loss. I mean, these are teams
I actually
with
like
very similar
Indiana
profiles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Indiana's
mean,
profile is better than North Carolina's.
I should say I don't dislike Indiana as much. That's a better way of putting it.
I mean, Indiana's 2 wins both on the road, especially at Michigan State. That's impressive.
But
There's
at
just
the, end
not
of the,
enough quality wins.
at the end of the day, 11 losses is so hard to stomach at this
Yeah.
point of this season.
Yeah.
But all in quad 1.
It looks very similar to Virginia's last year.
The other two 12 seeds, by the way, Marquette, you get Yale there, Matt, and Ole
Ooh, I
Miss.
like that Yale
Ole Miss
team.
gets
Mm.
Oh my
McNeese.
God, Yale is on
Yeah, I'd
fire.
much rather have McNeese than Yale.
Yeah.
But I'm going to really quickly go through the rest of the 13 through 16 seeds. We'll discuss these teams a lot more in our Under the Radar show Wednesday night. But on the 13 line, Kentucky gets High Point, Michigan State gets Arkansas State, St. John's gets this red hot Akron
Ooh,
Zips,
I like that. That's a
and
fun
Arizona
game,
gets
man.
Jacksonville State,
Yeah.
leading Conference USA. On the 14 line, Michigan, you get Chattanooga. Texas Tech gets Utah Valley. Purdue gets South Dakota State, our new leaders in the Summit League. And Wisconsin gets Lipscomb.
You should have put Utah Valley with Michigan. Then it'd be the Battle of the Wolverines.
There we go. On the 15 line, Houston gets Cleveland State. Tennessee gets Towson. Iowa gets Norfolk State. Texas A&M gets Montana. And on the 16 line, Auburn gets Bryant. Duke gets the winner of a game between SEMO and American. Alabama, the winner of a game between Quinnipiac and Southern. And Central Connecticut against Florida there.
Central Connecticut, who did not lose to Seton Hall.
The only team in Connecticut that did not lose to Seton Hall. Yes. Oh. But on that note, there's our bracket. And what I want to do is take a chance to run through each of you for any other final thoughts, either what we did tonight or anything else about college basketball you want to bring up. And Dorman, let me start with you.
Yeah, Bubba Cunningham on the show yesterday on CBS before the games kicked off. They did their top four seeds. But something he mentioned, he answered a couple questions with the same answer. He kept saying that it's the body of work. It's not one game. One game doesn't change me or the committee's beliefs or thoughts about one team. And it hit to me. That means because every year I put those conference tournaments where I think it's a loser is out or the winner is in. I think he was backing the sentiment that those games aren't necessarily end all be all. And the conference tournaments might not be loser is out or winner gets in. So it's the mistake I end up doing. I just think we put me a lot too much in maybe those last week's games where the committee is going to say it's the whole body of work. That's one game. We're not changing everything.
Agreed. Mike.
Yeah, I like it. Two things. I like it how, based on the seedings, that it just seemed like we were all in agreement that, it's like, like the teams there, it's like it was never, more than maybe two spots away from what we had ranked. So I think that's, I don't know, great minds think alike, or just, being, very consistent across the board. So I definitely appreciate that. I also want to say too, before I forget, even as a Wolverine, I want to congratulate Tom Izzo for having the most Big Ten wins, 354. That shows you that it attests to 30 years of consistent excellence. So congratulations to Tom Izzo. I won't wish him any luck on next Friday, but that's another matter. But I'm just really pleased at how the brackets have turned out. It just seems like that, we're it's very consistent with our rankings, and that we doesn't really deviate too far. We're pretty consistent across the board.
Titel.
My notes on the bracket is that I love the rematch options of like Auburn and Kentucky in the South, and of course the Tennessee Clemson Rick Barnes game in Cleveland will be fantastic. As far as a note not on the bracket, I just want to give a shout out to Vandy freshman on the women's side, Michaela Blake. You might have heard of her older brother, Jalen, a grad student at Stanford. He graduated from Duke in just 3 years. So last month, she set an SEC freshman record with 53 points in a road win at Florida. Today, a D1 freshman record with 55 in an overtime road win at Auburn. She's currently 8th in the nation in scoring, and the Commodores are projected to be a 7 seed. They might get sent to Los Angeles. If they win their opener, we could get a second-round game. Vandy against USC in LA, Michaela Blake against Juju Watkins. It would be the must-see individual battle of March.
Yeah, that's a good one. We're up to Matt.
Yeah, I said this is the one. I'm going to contest with Dorman a little bit. As another committee member mentioned, he doesn't look at one game. But as far as conference tournament goes, it looks like for this top 16 consideration, they were paying attention to results Tuesday, Wednesday in. So we're, unlike in past years where we felt like the television access might have left that committee room on Friday or so, this year I think they're going to be paying attention to some of those games. And like if there's a close battle for seedings, results of the conference tournament may matter.
I hope you're right.
It'd be nice because we've seen the last few years, it seems like they kind
Yeah.
of started ignoring conference tournaments.
Yep.
Rocco.
Yeah, I know in this bracket it's not fully represented, but I do want to give a shout out to the entire state of Alabama. They had an incredible weekend. It could not have been any more perfect for the entire state as a Division One perspective. So we'll start with Alabama State and Alabama A&M picking off wins in their league, the SWAC. Samford went to Wofford and won. They're 10-4 in the SoCon. Then the real juice began. We had this game called Auburn, Alabama. Auburn got that win, as we know, and that was the only loss in the entire state. Jacksonville State, first place, Conference USA, goes to Louisiana Tech, grinds out a road win, stays in first in Conference USA. North Alabama has a showdown in the A-Sun against Jacksonville. UNA gets the W. They're now tied for first with Lipscomb. Chad has Lipscomb as the rep, but I'll tell you this: they played once, the Lions won, and
Yeah.
they have the inside track for the 1 seed. Congrats to the Lions. South Alabama did their job. They beat Texas State at home, and carnage ensued last night on ESPN2 as Troy went to Arkansas State, another team from the state of Alabama, and that created absolute carnage with four teams tied for first. You look at the head-to-head among those four, the South Alabama Jags hold all the tiebreakers for the 1 seed right now, and they are in first in the Sun Belt.
With a chance at this
you have to
bracket, by the
clarify
way.
what conference you're talking about and what is at stake. This is the Fireman's Extension Ladder, the Stairway to Heaven. Who came up with that?
And this, yes, and I was texting with the Sun Belt coach this morning about this. This requires first responders. These are emergency responses because we're in a situation where, in performance metrics, Troy and Arkansas State are the two best teams. But right now, they're losing both the tiebreakers. They would be in the earlier part of the ladder, playing a night early just to meet up with South Alabama and James Madison, the projected 1 and 2 seed as it stands today. Just an incredible scene there in the Sun Belt. For better or worse, we're going to be entertained by it. I don't think it's the right thing for the league, but I'm only one guy. And at the end of the day, UAB beat South Florida today to cap it all off. The weekend, Alabama as a state, Division I, 9-1. The only loss was to another team from their state. Could not have been a better weekend for the entire state.
Roll Tide. Oh, wait. No, that's
It's not even football.
the only loser. Griggs, you want to finish the show off?
Yeah, I'll comment. And I'll respond to what Dorman said about the conference tournaments. Multiple committee members have said to me, and I believe them, that they do consider every game that's played. Now, consider does not mean reacting to. And if it's the third time teams are playing and the standings are set and they could just say, well, we've seen enough because the result of this game, they're either repeating something they've already done or it's not enough to offset or make up for everything that's happened. So just because the game didn't have an impact on the final bracket doesn't mean they didn't consider it. It just means that they considered it and decided not to weigh anything on it. But there are other times where we've seen the final bracket and it was pretty obvious to me that they did. So I think they do consider everything. My final thought, and I don't want to get too much into this because we're already kind of running late here, is tournament expansion has been a topic. They're looking at going out to 72 or 76, probably 76, which isn't a major expansion, but it's enough to where we're already holding our noses based on what we have. I really believe that one of the side effects and unforeseen consequences of tournament expansion is something that's not being talked about enough, and that's how it's going to water down the season, in particular the out-of-conference season. I will tell you flat out, I bet Rocco will agree with me because he works as a scheduling consultant. One of the reasons a lot of the Power Four schools want expansion is because they want to play more bye games. That's it. And you're going to have games that don't mean as much. There's going to be less incentive to schedule hard. If there's going to be less drama in November and December, I really think that of the major sports, and I know this might be a little biased, but I think the college basketball regular season from top to bottom is the most exciting regular season of any sport. The NBA plays 80 games and doesn't even eliminate half the teams. Football, like more than, or not close, not half, but close to half get in. In college basketball, it's about 20% over 30 games. Everybody has a path, unlike football, but you have to be good to get there, and you have to be good from November on. It's the best regular season, and I think expanding the tournament will ruin it, and it might ruin it big.
That we should probably do a whole off-season show on this topic here, and we probably could do a couple hours on it.
Yeah.
But we are way out of time tonight. So if you want to check out the final bracket we did, it's down there below us. If you want to check out the team sheets we were looking at, they're up there on the site. Conference tournaments, including that Sunbelt craziness, is up there as well. But on behalf of David Griggs, David Dorman, Matt Zakowski, John Titel, Mike Cha, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be talking to you again tomorrow night with the Hoops HD report, Wednesday with Under the Radar, and another bracket rundown next Sunday night. Talk to you again real soon.